Greetings, I hope you're doing well. Let's get started with this edition of Organizational Hack. Our goal today is fivefold. We want to be aware of generational differences in the workplace, understand the implications of physical space on organizations, comprehend the impact of modern technology, identify the impacts of COVID-19 on remote work, and, of course, ensure that all people are welcome and included in our organizations. To start off, it's important to know about the generational differences of employees. Leaders and managers need to understand the younger employees in organizations. For instance, today's new employees often demand more of their employers. Some workers expect exorbitant salaries coming right out of college, and this could cause some friction with those who have had to work for many years to see their income rise. Not only do they want a paycheck, they also desire other benefits and a social experience while at work. For instance, they may want video games, a pool table, and even a bike to use during breaks. They want to have a fun environment and have friendly relations with other coworkers. There is a possibility that they may want cereal, candy, and other snacks to keep their energy levels up during the workday. Leaders and managers will need to determine the extent to which they will accommodate these expectations. They will increase costs, but they might be needed to attract today's workers. There are other generational differences that leaders and managers should be aware of. An article by Angelica Stabile asserts that Gen Zers are more likely to disapprove of outdated language, the wasting of paper, and formal meetings that they feel are unnecessary. In addition, Gen Zers are highly adept with technology, far more so than the baby boomer or other generations that came before them. Gen Zers may therefore prefer email exchanges or text rather than face-to-face conversations. Meanwhile, baby boomers do not believe some issues can be addressed over the phone or via computer. In addition, simple things like replying to all on an email thread can be frustrating to the rising generation of workers. These types of differences across generations may have a significant impact on organizations. Leaders and managers must understand these distinct preferences and find ways to accommodate the younger and older workers. Things like the work environment and technology bring up other considerations for organizations, including physical space, information management, and remote work. So let's shift to some of those now. We learned from the Scientific Management School that physical space in a factory can have an impact on the performance of employees and the overall functioning of an organization. However, Mary Jo Hatch has noted that physical space has many other impacts and implications for organizations. For instance, the location of a headquarters and branch offices can determine effectiveness and efficiency. The layout of the floor plan of a building can influence how various units interact within an organization. Thomas Allen has discovered that cross-pollination of ideas is more likely when people from a different unit have a chance to interact near the break room, the copy room, and other shared facilities. Companies like Google have created locations where numerous buildings are set in a single location with pathways and landscape grounds. The look is somewhat similar to a university campus, and some employees seem to prefer this look and feel of the workplace. Hatch has described other impacts of building layout. The size of a leader's office and the location of it near or away from other employees may send desired or unwanted messages about power relationships and the openness of the organization. There could be an unwanted symbolic conditioning or communication that may occur in the organization based on the floor plan, so this needs to be taken into account during building and renovations. In addition, there are other changes that are taking place which may alter organizational behavior. There's a greater focus on green technologies that are more environmentally friendly in buildings. An open floor plan with lots of lighting is now more common. There's also more glass in rooms, additional meeting spaces, and hot desking, which implies daily occupation of office spaces versus having a permanent location to work in. Organizations need to be aware of the positive and negative features of these trends. Lighting is more inviting in these locations, but privacy may also be lost as a result of glass. Employees may appreciate or dislike these changes. The modern work environment is also closely related to technology, computers, online work, and virtual meeting opportunities, so let's turn to those subjects. Let's face it, virtually everything we do at work is now based on computer technology. Richard Nolan has written extensively on this subject and asserts that organizations move through several phases of acquisition and application, including initiation, proliferation, and eventually integration and a more mature system based on planning and control. What this means is that there's a lot of information at our fingertips now. With this in mind, public administration scholars, including Sharon Cowdell, assert that instead of focusing on technology, we need to give more attention to information itself and how that relates to organizations. This information can be overwhelming. Therefore, there has been increasing interest in information resource management and management information systems. Cowdell invites us to consider several important questions. Where does information come from? Is it reliable? What's the purpose of information? How does information relate to the organizational mission? Who can access information? How does information influence decision-making? How is information shared with others? How is data stored or deleted? And is data secure? In an era of information overload and significant and mounting cybersecurity threats, leaders and managers must take these questions seriously. Public administrators must increasingly tie the operation of the organization to information technology specialists. There has also been a dramatic shift to online work, and COVID-19 certainly sped up this trend or transition. COVID-19 was a situation that forced leaders to engage in crisis management. Companies had to find ways to operate safely under the conditions of a global pandemic. In other cases, COVID-19 forced organizations to consider if they should temporarily shut down or attempt to operate remotely. Because the goal was to avert the spread of the coronavirus, some companies halted operations for a period of time. This hurt both workers needing a paycheck and the bottom line of businesses. In other cases, organizations, whether private, public, or nonprofit, sought ways to operate virtually. While the shift to remote work was already underway over the past decade or two, COVID-19 certainly sped it up. Organizations and employees had to ensure computers, laptops, software, and the internet were functioning in workers' homes and apartments. COVID-19 illustrated that work could occur remotely in many cases. Emails, electronic signatures, Teams, Zoom, and other platforms allowed work to occur virtually. This has had both positive and negative outcomes. On the positive side, remote work can save companies money by reducing the size of offices and the payment of utilities. Many workers also preferred remote work because they did not have to commute, and this reduced expenses on gas and improved the quality of their lives. However, virtual work was hindered in some cases by low internet connectivity. People had to adapt to new ways of meeting, and a common saying of the time was, "You're on mute." As the threat of COVID-19 passed, the request for some employees to come back to work met resistance in some organizations. Leaders and managers had to determine who can work remotely in organizations and how to motivate others to come into the office. This has not been fully resolved, and it will be interesting to see how remote work occurs and its impacts over the next few years and decades. Let me address one more issue that is definitely salient for organizations today, and this issue has to do with sexual preference and gender identity. This topic could be addressed in a lengthy video, but I do want to make sure I cover it here because of its importance in the work environment. Organizations need to make sure that they welcome and include lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, non-binary, and plus individuals, whether they are employees or customers or others that organizations serve. This is necessary since all people are humans and they deserve to be treated with respect. However, leaders and managers should be aware of the potential for controversy in the organization. For instance, let's assume that a human resource put a LGBTQIA+ flag outside the building. John is fine with this, but he wonders why there's not an American flag there also. Here is a second example of controversy to be aware of. A person named Elizabeth was born as a male, but now identifies as a woman. Elizabeth uses the women's restroom. This makes Nancy uncomfortable. Here's a third scenario. John is gay and openly talks about his partner at work. Stan is very religious and he is uncomfortable with these types of conversations. Stan often preaches to John about how he needs to change his behavior. As a result, John feels like he's being discriminated against. These types of situations are real and can definitely present challenges to leaders and managers. Those in positions of authority need to determine how they will deal with these types of concerns. Perhaps the best option is to find a compromise or eliminate the problem altogether. For instance, perhaps both flags can be flown at the building so no one feels left out. Or perhaps individual gender-neutral restrooms can be present in buildings, which eliminates any grievances on this topic. The last example may be the hardest issue to address, so policies need to be created to determine how people must treat one another, hopefully with respect. This applies to all types of groups, as well as other racial and ethnic groups, which I've addressed in a prior video. To conclude, I would like to reiterate a few key points. There are differences among generations, and efforts need to be made to bridge potential divides. Physical space can impact operations, and it may provide symbolic messages to the culture of the organization. There has been a noticeable shift towards online working, and organizations need to determine who can work at home and what policies govern this type of arrangement. Finally, all people, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, need to be respected in the organization. Efforts should be taken to eliminate grievances altogether or find ways to minimize them through expectations for employee interaction. Thanks again for joining me for this video. I hope you have a great day.